You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
Jen Doan,
Stéphanie Morin-Robert,
and Joanie Farran.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
Happy birthday to us. It's the 1-year anniversary of Dirty Feet and, of course, of No More Radio. We're taking today's episode to celebrate the fact that we've been doing this for a year straight. We've released to you one episode a week all about dance, speaking to choreographers and dancers, talking about issues in the world, having roundtable discussions all concerned with dance and movement and performing arts here on the Dirty Feet podcast. We've been doing it for a year straight since we started in November of 2012. And here we are a year later, still going strong. There's been a shift in the team since then, and we are just taking a moment to honor the team that we've had and the team that we are moving forward with. So we've gathered a beautiful group of people here today, all people who have passion for dance, who have experience in the industry, and who've shared that experience and knowledge with us in the form of hosting the Dirty Feet podcast over the past year. So we want to take the time to say, who are these people, and thank you, and what is it about dance that moves you, and have a little discussion on that topic, and why this is important to us, this podcast, Dirty Feet, just talking, having a dialogue about dance and inspiring inquiry about choreography and dance and performing arts and movement. So I am Alison Burns, and I am one of the co-founders of the Dirty Feet podcast. And I want to introduce to you now, if you are a new listener, I want to introduce to you the other co-founders of the Dirty Feet podcast and one of our new hosts. So we have to my left here,
JD Papillon, Jean-Daniel Papillon. One of the other co-founders, really, really happy to see all of the experiences that we've had to do and enjoy during that year. And to my left is
Stéphanie Morin-Robert, and I am a new addition to the team. I think this is maybe my 4th recording. I had the pleasure of participating and being on the show, so seeing it from the other side of the world as an artist, and also designed the logo. Yeah.
Hi, this is Jen Doan. I was also one of the co-founders as well when Dirty Feet started last year, and I'm here back as a guest, I guess, to see what you guys have done for the last year and catch up, because I left the show at the end of probably March of this year to pursue some of my own endeavors, but I'm really happy to be back and see what all this, has been built up to.
And lastly, this is Joanie Farran. I've been on board, again, I guess as a co-founder as well, of the Dirty Feet podcast, and now moving on to other swell things, but very proud of having been part of this first year, because I can only see this podcast go up. I'm excited about what's coming up, for sure.
Great. So maybe we've shaken the nerves off a little bit. I know we're a little shy about talking about ourselves, but here we go. So a little bit of history for y'all. JD and I were actually at the Movement Museum with Jen Doan on CKUT previous to the founding of this podcast. And so we participated on that show for varied amounts of years. I think I was there for 3, JD maybe a few months, and Jen maybe 2 years with Movement Museum.
At least a year and a half.
At least a year and a half.
Almost 2 years.
Cool. So that's kind of where we got our passion started, the three of us. And Joanie Farran came on board when we started, when we launched and moved over to No More Radio and started the Dirty Feet podcast for further independence and just, a little bit more flexibility in our programming and our timing. And it's been so far an all-around good time. So my purpose today is I want the world to know these people that I work with, because I think you guys are so brilliant. And I think we spend so much time concentrating on our guests who are amazing people. And I think it would be nice for our listeners to know who we are as interviewers coming into this, what our perspective is. If you don't mind, JD, I'd like to speak with you first. You are Concordia Contemporary Dance graduate recently, and you have a history in English literature before that even. So you're a man of many talents, and as I'm sure our listeners already know, you're very thoughtful, and you have a lot of introspection and kind of a more academic look at things. And I wonder if you could just extrapolate a little bit on this kind of mixed history you have with kind of literature, academia, and dance, and why you switched into dance.
Wow. Okay. Basically, yeah, my first love was literature. It was creative writing. I did my bachelor's at McGill in English, and I knew nothing about dance whatsoever. After that, I did some more studies. I did the creative writing certificate at UQAM. And basically, dance, I remember my first experience with dance, going to see shows with a friend of mine. And I remember just how visceral the experience was. And I think that that's what a lot of people who love dance, who truly love dance, love the most about it. It's that whether it's something that you're watching or doing, it always comes down to that gut feeling that you get when you dance. There's something so empathetic about movement and about the kinetic energy that's being released. And that just hit me. That's so different from writing, right? Because writing, it's all in your head, and when you're moving, when you're seeing someone move. So that's really what gripped me. And when I was doing my certificate in creative writing at UQAM, I took an intro to contemporary dance class. And I remember one of my last classes going to the UQAM building where the UQAM School of Dance is, and just being so depressed to some extent that this was going to be my last time going into a studio, get ready and take a dance class, that I decided to go into a dance program. So I took a year to just train, and then I did the auditions, and then I got into both UQAM and Concordia, decided to go to Concordia for various reasons. And at Concordia, I had the chance to be motivated by some really fantastic people, namely Philip Sporer and Sylvie Penn et Raymond, who were both really into the more academic thinking about dance, really about discussing dance. And I think they're people who most motivated me into doing something like this, because I feel that dance has many qualities, but one that we often forget is just how important it is to discuss this, how important it is to talk about all of the intricacies that go into creating physical works. It's not just about doing pretty movement that people look at and, oh, that looks nice. Dancers are artists, they're athletes, they're also thinkers. And I feel that with what we're doing here and with what other people are doing also, we give the chance to creators to talk about it. And I think that this is that's what Dirty Feet is, that dance is about the community and it's about the sharing of ideas.
If I can take now the opportunity to talk to Jen Doan. It's been a while since you've been on the show, but you were on Movement Museum for a while, as we already said, and you did have the motivation to start Dirty Feet with us. And I know the passion is still in your heart. The time is not, however, in your schedule. Can you let us know? I know you're also a Concordia graduate, and you're currently active in your own creative process with Ted Strauss and Woe Me Myth, creating dance and music collaborations. Perhaps to scale it back and talk about your history, I know that you also started training late in dance and kind of how that fire got lit for you.
Ooh, okay, how did dance begin for me? I'll make it short and brief, but I took my very first dance class when I was in grade 12, and I just loved it. But I've always been a very kinesthetic child, like always running around and, just when I remember my childhood, like I was like just always moving and had to be active. So I discovered dance class in grade 12 and I loved hip hop. So I started like just getting into it and took my first grade 10 dance class in grade 12. And then I went to university and basically went into university as a business student. I was very like driven in that way. And then lots of things happened in my life, and my parents went through a really crazy divorce, and it kind of just like shattered my paradigm in life. And I was just like, what, I was questioning so many things. And I basically went from a 3.8 GPA student in business to failing all of my classes in one semester. And the only thing that kept me going to school and kept me moving was my introduction to dance classes that I took in my drama classes. So that was really like a huge kind of like shift for me. And I was like, okay, what is this? This actually is giving me a little bit of life, because it's quite down in that time in my life when I failed all my classes and everything was chaotic. And that, I think, was the light that drew me into dance and into being creative and into moving. And, after taking some time to really recover and find my way again, I decided, I was like, okay, this is it. Well, I went from business to kinesiology to then just being like, no, I'm going to go for contemporary dance. So I got my, technique under my belt, audition, got in. And from there, I started dance at the University of Calgary, did my thing, got really involved, got really passionate, and then went to Montreal for 10 days, and I realized that they had a university that had a contemporary dance choreography program, and I was like, oh my God. So I actually came to Montreal to do an exchange for 1 year, and I remember at the end of my first semester, I went up to one of my teachers, Michael Montanaro, who, is an amazing man. And I was like, Michael, I can't go back to Calgary. And he's like, don't. I was like, okay. So I stayed, and I'm so glad that I did. So I transferred and I finished my degree, and yeah, that's really how dance started for me. And contemporary dance specifically was just something that drew me into it, because it allowed me, as like someone who was older starting dance, to like be expressive and to be creative and to be like to develop my own voice. So I just fell in love with it right away and got right into it and just was like, that's it. So yeah, now I'm still in Montreal and, still involved in creating and all of that. And anyways, that's basically how dance started for me. That's what drew me into it.
And what was your motivation to start with Movement Museum and to help with 30 Feet, founding that?
Oh, so with Movement Museum, just the idea of getting to be on the radio and like be part of a different part of the dance community. It's really a different part, like being someone, that we get to meet all these artists and interview them and pick their brains and learn from them. That was like really exciting. And also getting a chance to like be able to go and see shows and have access to that. It was just like a whole different approach. And then Dirty Feet, when you approached me, I was like, yeah, I totally want to do this. This is a great idea to branch out and to really grow this, because it was also unique. We don't have a lot of podcasts and radio programs that just talk about dance. So I always just like things that, kind of new and pushing the boundaries. So I was like, all right, let's do it.
And our third co-founder over here, Joanie Farran, you also hail from Concordia University. There is a trend here. We did have to meet at one point. And you've trained at Cégep and you've trained at university in dance. And I've always considered you a dance history buff. I know that you seem to know all the names, and you were very active in searching out videos and kind of researching dance. And I think that's such an asset that you have a real good awareness of how to relate things to the history of dance and where they come from and where their inspirations are. And I actually don't know where you started dancing and why you started dancing, and I'd love to hear it.
It's interesting because listening to JD and Jen, I hear things that I already knew, and I hear things that I didn't know. I think that you guys have started in a more pragmatic way, your studies, more practical way, maybe business, literature, slightly, and then ventured off to dance, I guess, as a liberation of some sort, or something that was just calling you. I started the other way around. Started dancing. I started dancing late as well. After high school, I went into a drama program in Cégep. Found that I was too scared to audition for actor roles. Went into dance just because I had to keep this artistic approach, or had to keep diving in it. Did the deck en danse, did the back en danse, and I think afterwards tried it, but I felt like I needed something more safe and I guess more practical. Do you know what I mean when I say I kind of went the opposite way? I was driven by it, but eventually I had to go back to something more pragmatic, I guess. I also find that my strongest quality is my determination. I find that when I want something, I go get it. I'll have it. So deep down, if I'm not dancing actively right now, it's because it's not something that I really wanted. For me, this podcast was, I guess, a way of keeping a foot in the door to kind of see where things would lead, where things would go. And I ended up dancing last summer, which I didn't expect to do. And I really enjoyed that. And it got me thinking that maybe even if I'm not involved, I'm still open to it. And who knows what could happen. You know, and in the past year, I've seen and witnessed the struggles, the highs, the lows of this, of the practice of the art form and the people involved in it. And I have really thought, and I think that I've made the right choice in my personal prospects, what I've been doing, studying translation, graduating, and just priorities change for everyone from year to year. You have to question what you want and how to go get it. And I guess that's why in the end, unfortunately, I have to leave the podcast, but not leave forever, I guess, just depart on something else, and eventually, who knows what's going to drive me back.
It makes me think of that episode we had quite a while back about, I think it was about the party trad with that gentleman from the townships, and his talking about it. We started a discussion about how it's not all or nothing, and about how social dance is about kind of you're not either a dancer or not a dancer. That you can enjoy dance and not make it your entire life, and that there needs to be more of that, because we're alienating people and making people shy to move.
That's right. I find that sometimes if you can't choreograph, then maybe you dance, and if you can't dance, then maybe you teach it a little bit, or maybe you go on a podcast and talk about dance and talk to dancers and initiate any spark, any little thing that can keep you going. Like you say, it's not always black or white. There's this little gray area where I find that you can still follow your passion.
All right, before we get too introspective, guys, let's finish these introductions here. We also have Stephanie Morin-Robert, who is a new addition, who's also from Concordia. And we've introduced her recently with a bit of a bio. So, I mean, if you could do a roundup of where you come from, but I think we would focus too on kind of your interest in talking about dance.
So I guess I've always had this need to move, and I could kind of relate to what Jen said, whether it was actually dance or running or playing outside or you know, throwing myself down the stairs, or like always just wanted the thrill of being in movement and not being stationary. And I think that whether it's in my work or whether I'm guiding other people to move as a choreographer, whether I'm moving myself in my own work or in other people's work, I feel that talking about it and researching other people who are passionate about something that's so close to home for me really helps me kind of open my focus to not just focusing on what I'm doing, because it's really easy to kind of get into your own projects and not go see other shows, or not participate in other activities, or not be a part of another community. And you have to focus so hard on your work to make something happen, because most of us as choreographers, we're also dealing with the administrative side of things, and the grant applications and booking shows and managing tours, and there's so much that we're doing that we kind of get caught up in our own life. So I feel like on this podcast it kind of forces me, and I say forces me because it is something that forces me to look into other people's processes and other people's just paths, how they got where they are, where they're going next, and I feel like it's a very inspiring thing, and it helps me figure things out, not only in my own work, but also I think it just helps us grow. I think questioning anything, whether it's your own work or other people's work, is helps you. It always comes back to. So I guess it's a pretty selfish thing. It's like it forces me to get outside of my own process, of my own ideas, of my own background or choreographies. It really helps me open my eyes to that. Every time I say open my eyes, I feel like I shouldn't say that, but yeah.
I totally know what you mean by forces you to. I mean, currently you have a rehearsal director running your rehearsal for you when you're then you're taking the active choice to be here today, which I appreciate.
And it's and just that decision was the hardest thing, to have somebody else look after my rehearsals. I would have never even dreamed of having that opportunity as somebody willing to do that and interested in my work in that way to kind of help it grow. But also a trust issue, right, of how much you want people involved in your work and how much you want them to have a say or have... Anyway, it's a big learning process, and I think it's a lot to juggle a lot of projects, but there's also something really magical about it, because I don't think I wouldn't have a rehearsal director if I wasn't doing this. And having a rehearsal director is going to help me in so many ways.
And something else that I would like to point out is that you have a lot of you sought out a lot of opportunities to learn on the administrative side of things. You've worked with Body Slam on the administrative side. You've also been artist liaison for the Fringe Festival a couple years now. And yeah, perhaps you could just extrapolate on that side of what you do.
Yeah, I feel like in any project there's always these opportunities to, if it's not making money, which I guess making money with dance opportunities is pretty rare, but if it's not just the opportunity to perform, it's also the opportunity to learn how to kind of manage, or whether it's rehearsal schedules or bookings or dealing with different venues, or so through Body Slam I was able to apply kind of that help. I was a part of the collective and was performing, and but to also be able to help with my expertise as an administrative kind of more business person. And it's the way I was raised. I mean, both my mother and father are business people. They owned their own businesses. So I think that's probably where that comes from. But I've learned a lot. And I think even just working for the Fringe Festival, it's never about the money, because it can't be, because there isn't a lot of money involved. But there's just so much to learn, and it's all of these things, whether it's dance or just management. I feel like it's something that you can apply to your life in every way, in any way possible. So it's been really great.
Awesome, Stephanie. And now I guess the only one who hasn't given us her little background info is Alison Burns. Alison, now again, we're all Concordia grads from different years, but Alison, Jen, and I were from the same cohort, from the same year. We spent quite a lot of time together. I know Alison started dancing since she was very young, the sort of classical training, I guess. But tell us more, please.
No, that's right. I mean, I was very lucky that my parents were able to kind of throw me into any activity. I was a girl guide, and I played the piano very badly, and I played the violin very badly, and that lasted about 2 months each or something like that. And dance stuck. Dance was something that I was like, I can keep doing this. So yes, I started with ballet, and then in the small studio I was in Ottawa, kind of started doing character dance and modern dance as well. And then I went to an arts high school in Ottawa. It was Canterbury High School, which is, I'm learning more and more, pretty hot school, because I keep running into people in the arts industry here that are also graduates from that high school. So I'm very proud to be a Canterbury grad. And then moving from there, after studying dance in high school, I applied to university. I was between Queen's for biology or Concordia for contemporary dance. And I was at the orientation at Queen's University, and I was asking them about dance classes. And they were like, well, there's this extracurricular dance club, and I was kind of asking more questions about that and telling them a bit about my history, and they were like, well, you could probably teach the classes. And I didn't really have any interest in that. I wanted to be pushed. I wanted to learn. I didn't want to just maintain my situation. So I went to Concordia, and to be honest, I didn't know quite what I was getting myself into. Coming, especially like you were saying, from a more kind of classically trained background, without that kind of contemporary process experience ever. And it was a real shake-up and a real experience. And I appreciate so much that program, and I feel like anybody could take something away from that program. It's really about learning how you think and how you work, and a toolbox for giving you places to start when you're creating, and that is a really broad term, but when you are creating. So I've really appreciated that. Since then, I've really split my interests between this, the radio show previously and now the podcast. I also work with Amy Blackmore and a whole team of people on the Bouge d'ici Dance Festival, where we support emerging artists in the field of contemporary dance, and we help them rework a piece with the help of a mentor. The whole concept of the festival is both community building and mentor pairing, but we've talked about that on the podcast before, so I won't get too into it. But Jen Doan actually was one of the original participants in the first common space ever, along with me. And in addition to that, I'm currently dancing for Stéphanie Robert as a performer. I also have an ongoing creative process with two band members. Their band is called Faster. It's a saxophone player and singer, Kayla Milmine, and a guitarist, Brian Abbott, and myself, and that's been a real fun ride. It's been quite a few years I've been working with Kayla, and just a couple of years I've been working with the two of them, and that really feeds me creatively at the moment. It's kind of it's a funny place I've ended up creatively. I mean, and by ended up, I mean, I hope there's much more in the future, but we're doing very silly things, and I think it's things that we didn't necessarily have permission to do in school, but that school taught me how to do well, and I'm really enjoying that ride right now. Yeah, so that's what's up with me.
I love how you say that you didn't know what you were getting yourself into for Concordia, because I feel like in a way nobody knows what you're actually getting yourself into when you take a program like that, because they dig so deep, and it's not even just about dance, you know. I feel like personally, you come out of that program and you're like, holy crap, like I had no idea who I was as a person before entering this program. Just to say, yeah, it really stirs you up.
I'd like to go back to the history a bit aspect of Dirty Feet and talk about that switch when we decided, well, first of all, it should be mentioned that this whole idea of starting Dirty Feet on the No More Radio podcast was Allison's idea. And I remember when you first told us about this, about us making the jump from Movement Museum on CKUT, which, you know, is very established, which was a sure thing to some extent, because there was already a built-in audience. There was also the possibility of people who knew nothing about dance who would just listen to us by random. And when you first got us, me, Jen, Joanie wasn't completely on board yet. And when you told us, let's do this, and No More Radio was not even a thing yet. It was just something that Paula Flalo was working on. And there was so much excitement that first meeting. Just over coffee, talking about, can we do this? Is this something that's safe enough to do? Should we risk losing everything we have with Movement Museum? And I just remember this trepidation going on of, you know, like all of the potential that was behind it. I'd like to hear what Jen remembers from those days.
I definitely remember our meetings at the Java U there on Sherbrooke, right, when we started talking about it. I remember, and hopefully I remember correctly, that I was pretty excited about jumping into a podcast world because, you know, Movement Museum had its like security and stability, and like, you know, things were comfortable. Like we had a show, we had a slot, people knew us, you know, press knew, you know, CKUT, so it was easy to access that. But I think my feeling was that, you know, this was going to give us more, like more access, more listeners. It was going to like expand much more because it was a podcast. It wasn't geographically limited. So I was pretty excited about that, and I trusted Allison because, you know, she was very passionate about it, and she was like, had this vision, and it was like, all right, this is how it's going to be, and I really feel good about it, and it's like, all right, let's do it, you know, I think it's going to be great, because when you take risks, that's when you grow and you expand way more than when you stay in that comfortable zone. So yeah, I think that Allison really, you know, came in with a vision, and it was like, all right, let's do it.
I think that should lead into Allison telling us a bit about how she lived that move, because she'd been on CKUT for a long time, for 2-3 years, you said, and this you know, you were the one being the most affected by this new this new idea that you had by this jumping ship to some extent. So how did that come about, and how did you feel going through that process? Because it was really, really letting go of something that you'd been involved with for so long.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I was fed a lot from the Movement Museum experience. I think I started it when I came right out of school, so it was all about continuing my education in a way. It gave me, weekly homework to research a guest, or we were also doing dance history segments. We were doing poetry segments. We were doing a lot of interesting stuff where, like Joanie was saying earlier too, it kept me in touch with what was going on when I wasn't really quite sure where I was going. But I knew I wanted to see shows. I knew I wanted to learn more about dance. So that's kind of what that was at that time. And then a little later, I ended up kind of being in charge of producing the show, which was a whole new kettle of fish. And then it was less about homework and more about producing. And that was really exciting for me. And then it ended up stagnating a little bit in the restriction with the time and also the need for content that created the space where the show wasn't 100% interesting all the time, because if we couldn't find a guest, or if our guest didn't show up, we would end up talking to ourselves, which sometimes was really great. I mean, also Katie Belanger was on the show for a while, and she's a very smart girl, and that was a lot of fun. We could just give her a half an hour with an article about grants and just watch her go, and that would be great. But sometimes it wasn't great. Sometimes it was flat, and I wanted more control over who we booked, how long we talked, and have no ads. I also wanted the possibility for growth, which was not possible on a university radio station where kind of the structure is set, and it's set to be there. The whole point of like Shock and CKUT and their whole concept is to be a stepping stone for people who are interested in communication. So there's no reason for them to grow beyond what they are, because what happens is that people that produce those shows grow beyond what they are. So in that sense, we're kind of doing exactly what the program was set out to do, is move away from that into a format where from here we can travel the show. Like Jen was saying, we can have different audiences in different cities as it's available by podcast. So there's a lot of interesting potential there. And I think now that we've got a year under our belt, we can start looking forward and bigger and see what comes of it. I also have a question I want to sneak in to Joanie because she is continuing on into the field of translation, and she's been doing all the Dirty Feet translation, which she doesn't necessarily get credit for, so I need to make that known right now. She's also been doing a lot of translation for Bouche d'ici. Now, what I find really interesting about this, and it really occurred to me clearly when I had somebody ask me to look over their English version of a French description of a show, and it was next to impossible. Because when you're speaking about creative language, when you're speaking about my choreographic, my artistic pursuit, that's really difficult to comprehend in one language, let alone two. So I wonder how these interests of yours are intertwined. Because that's a real asset, that you are aware of kind of the language of the artistic language when you approach something to translate it.
There's a whole other level to it. There's also this whole, you need to actually understand what that person is not only trying to say, but what they're doing in a visual way, right?
Yes. Okay.
You read like someone's bio and they talk about their creative process. Even for me in English, I'm like,
okay, I see what you mean. Right. Well, I'm learning a lot how a good translation is one that you can tell that it's a translation, one that's written as if it was, again, written from the person in its mother tongue, whatever mother tongue it is. We don't know. We don't want to know. And obviously, I like to say that my field of expertise is arts and culture, because I have, like we all know, the vocabulary, especially more and more with the podcast, people who've interviewed, the way they've talked, the words they've used, the sentence they've used, or the words they couldn't use to describe a piece, it tells a lot. And it has helped me to write or to translate dancers' words on their pieces and their bios, their creative process and whatnot. which is why I'd like to translate in the field. Maybe again to what I've said a couple times, but to keep a foot in the door. I really enjoy translation. I always get a little smile when I start. It's like a puzzle I have to like fix, and it's even better when I get dance words or a bio I have to translate. I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm definitely thinking of sending out my resume to all the theater, dance companies, festivals in Montreal and elsewhere to translate whatever little piece they do for free if needed. No, not for free really, but for
those listening.
Yeah,
she doesn't actually want to do it for free.
Go on my website www.traductionjp.com, and then we'll talk.
An interesting thing is dealing with. I'm collaborating with a poet right now, and we want to have possibly a section of the show be in French. So when you're writing poetry, it's kind of very similar in that way, where you can't just translate it because there's images, there's relationships between words, and even sometimes just the sound of the word. And there are people who are, that's what they do. They're poetry translators. So I think it's such an interesting thing that, you know, it's not just translating. It's very artistic, and there's a sensibility that you need to bring forward in that kind of work.
I'm so happy how this kind of slipped into this conversation about language, because that's kind of the challenge that we're dealing with right now on a podcast. And I've said this before, but I love it when we have an articulate artist in the studio who can kind of describe their work with really clear words. And I think our guest last week really demonstrated that. Anne Vanderbroek, and I called her out on it because it was really clear what she was talking about, her punctuation. She was talking about her style in such a expressive way. And I wonder if, I guess particularly Jen, Stephanie, and JD, when you're working on the podcast, has that changed the way that you speak about your work or the way that you think about your work? Because you're applying more language to dance?
Yes, extremely. When we had the interview with Anne, I realized that she kind of started being like, well, I took violin classes, and as a joke, right, saying that this was a part of her life, but not necessarily important in this like interview about dance and about her work. But I realized that all of the terminology that she was using and the reason why we had this image of what her movement was, and it was so clear, is because of this terminology that is so closely linked to music, whether it's I can't think of I
think she used the word staccato.
Staccato, you know, words like that, music words.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's it's so closely linked, right? Whether it's rhythm or texture or the way you kind of initiate a certain section or a certain partition of de musique. So it's I thought that was an interesting thing, where the violin lessons weren't necessarily important, but they actually were a huge part of her vocabulary and the way that she described her movement and talked about it.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about 2 days ago, I went back to my notes that we got from dance school, and I was reading through it just to get my brain stimulated in that way, because I haven't been on the radio show for like probably over 6 months, and I'm running a business right now, so my brain is mostly absorbed in that. So thinking in dance and in terms of linguistics or language and the arts has been something that I've kind of been disconnected with. And I actually, now having this discussion, I was thinking about how I had to take those notes out and start reading them and kind of get my brain in that way, because it is a really important stimulus for the creative process as well. And I guess we'll talk about this later, but this work that we're creating right now is also challenging me like crazy, because it's taking something that's basically like a storyboard with words and narrative and characters into something that I have to create and abstract it. So there's definitely a large play of like language and words in right now that I need to, I just need to get a handle of that and figure out how to wrap my brain around it again, to use that as to stimulate the creative process for myself.
And JD, has this made a difference, or because of your academic kind of angle, have you always had a strong relationship between words and dance?
I would say that even before the podcast, like even when I was in school, one of the most fun I had was those classes where we would actually really delve into issues, like some professors especially, such as K.G. Gottman, Sylvie Paneramon again, would really push us to talk about things and to be conscious of the language that we would be using. So that's something that I really enjoyed. I would say that when it comes to Dirty Feet and Movement Museum before that, the reviews, doing the reviews is really something that forced me to bring this into a more calculated communication that would really not just be about this easy discussion. You know, when you talk to someone face to face, it's easy. Like if you're misunderstood, you just clarify. But when we have to write a review, we have to be as clear as possible right from the start, because you won't get to rectify your comments or explain them. So for me, this is really the aspect where I had to be more thoughtful about the exact language I was using, I feel. But we've been lucky. I feel that on Dirty Feet, we've had some fantastic guests. Like for this, over a year now, and even a few months before that on Movement Museum, we've had some amazing guests who just would get me so riled up with everything that they had to bring to the table. And I when it gets tough coming to the studio to record this, it takes up a lot of our time. It's a lot of organization. But we have such fantastic people in Montreal who talk about dance with so much passion, such clear, concise language, but also with so much vivacity. I feel that this is really what I get out of it. Talking about dance is fun. I mean, it's also frustrating at times. But I feel that even more than just being conscious of the language, it makes me realize how much the creators have to say. I remember talking to Nicolas Sado, who is the press relationist at l'Agora de la Danse, and he was telling me that to some extent, he can't understand the dance world, because people in dance create a piece over a period of like 1, 2, 3 years sometimes, and then they show it for 4 nights in a row, and then the piece almost vanishes, because it's such an ephemeral art form that, we won't sell videos unless you're Wayne McGregor or something. But, we don't have much of a record of it. And when we talk about it, when we talk about everything that happened during those 3 years, all of the thought process, the creators get to have a bit more say about what they did. It's not just about what's being presented on stage. And, dance is also very hermetic sometimes. It can be hard to access. It can be hard to understand. But talking about it allows us to go deeper into all of that world that was building inside of the choreographers. And I think that doing this show is what it really made me realize how much creators have to say.
I think an important thing of that as well is that we're recording these podcasts not just for an audience that has this educational or very historical background about dance, who have participated in dance and who do dance. There may be people, I hope, listening out there that are also just love dance, and just like to kind of witness it and aren't necessarily a part of this whole community and movement. I mean, they're still a part of the community, but they're not a part of the creative side of it, right? So I think that there's an important line to draw as to how accessible the information is, and if it's really blocked off to only people who've studied it for years or who could really understand it. I think that's something that's really important to me, not only in the work I watch or the work I do or when we talk about this. I think it's something that it's important for people to be able to relate to it in some way or just follow. They don't have to understand everything, but I think it's important for people to not feel that they have to have this. They don't have to have a university diploma, or they didn't have to go to Cégep and study dance, or they don't have to be a part of a company, or they don't have to be a choreographer to enjoy it, to witness it, and to let it influence their lives.
I'm just thinking about an experience I had a few weeks ago, just regards to language and, the way that we express ourselves. I met up with a friend about 3 weeks ago. He's an artist. He works more in visual, and he does a lot of 3D animation, but he's very much an artist at heart. And it was interesting to meet up with him because as we started having conversation, I realized, I thought in my head, you are such an artist. Because the way that we perceive our worldview and express it, and the way we speak about life and creative process and all that, it's very unique. It's a very different way, where I'm comparing this because in the last 6 months I've been very much involved as a businesswoman in that thought process, in that way of life. And in meeting up with my friend again like 3 weeks ago, I was like, wow, you're such an artist. Like the way you articulate things, the way you express things, and it's just very unique. So that in itself, when you experience those two worlds, you're like, wow, like interesting. It's just very interesting the way that we speak. And I think if we hang out with artists all the time and we're used to that, we interpret that, we understand that. But when you take yourself out of that context, you're like, oh wow, like it's very, yeah, like I said, it's a very unique way of perceiving the world that we live in and expressing it.
I see a little tie here into something that I wanted to bring up. The idea of is entertainment void of artistic merit is my question. When you see a piece that's maybe on So You Think You Can Dance or you know, the Beyonce Put a Ring on It video, like there's some hot dancing going on there. Can we call that art? Is that because it's fun, because it's entertaining? Is it not worth our time because nobody's peeing in a bucket? Can we not call it good?
I think that first we need to define like just what does entertainment mean? What is that for each one of us? And then I'd like to actually really answer that question that you've asked.
Because I think there's this whole scare of like once you make it big and you're selling, or you're actually making money with it, that it becomes this commercial thing. And it's like, I feel like there's this like blocage of us wanting to make money, but thinking that we need to live our lives in this poor artistic way because that's the only way we can make raw, authentic work. So I feel like there's this like, I feel like it has something to do with money, exposure, having, whether you have a producer, whether it's aired on TV, and unfortunately, usually things that are more accessible, more not necessarily family friendly, but entertainment friendly, are things that will kind of label like, oh, that's not art. I think it's all art. I just think that people don't necessarily have the same definition of what art is, and that's where the problem is. Well, it's not a problem. That's where the conflict starts. It's just different mentalities, different approaches, and different definitions of what art actually is.
And what entertainment is as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is entertainment, Jen, to you?
That's a good question. I really have to think about that myself.
In the meantime, I think, I don't know, art, entertainment, it's so close together. Yesterday I was watching an interview with the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and they asked her about the big motion picture that was done with Julia Roberts, about her story, and she was like, I can't, like, she was very amazed and overwhelmed by how Hollywood had taken her story, but she could also just like not listen to it, not listen to the reviews or critics or the fact that Julia Roberts was portraying her in the movie. She was like, I'm a writer and this is what I do. And if I've touched women in the world to just do what they want to do, then I've done what I've done. And she's an artist for me for doing that. Although entertainment has taken her, it didn't even take her away because she doesn't care at this point, but I find her art and the entertainment that followed it is intertwined. And she's still maintained to be who she is. I guess that's what it is. If you just stay who you are, no matter how much money you make, no matter, how popular you get, I think that essentially you are an artist and you do deserve what you have.
There's a line I'd like to kind of make a link to, and I feel it. Even, it's strange, even just bringing up Arcade Fire, I feel like it's a cliche thing to do because of them kind of being big now and all of that, like, this, I feel like we have boundaries of being like, if you read something, listen to something that's popular, it doesn't make it good. Or there's like this whole hipster movement of that, you know what I mean? I feel like it's horrible. It's really horrible. I think as long as you're doing it from a real place and you're not following, as long as you're creating for yourself and you're not creating, yeah, I think it just has to be real. But it's like, what's real?
I think it also comes down to the question of like, maybe not so much what does entertainment mean and what is art, but it's also what is the quality of the entertainment? What is the quality of the artwork? Because, if you really, like, briefly on a surface level, you think entertainment, like Hollywood movies, right? Entertainment, or like, pop music, entertainment. But then within that, like, I don't think we can separate that some of these like larger things that we view as being popular and maybe isn't as artistic, and strip them away of being a creative and artistic. So the quality, like if something is mainstream and popular, like the question I think for me is like, does it stimulate the imagination of the viewer? Does it stimulate inspiration? Because, I came from like a really long like history of just rejecting pop arts and pop and culture and all of that, and even Hollywood movies. I didn't watch movies for like years, and I got really back into that as a way for me to step into the world to see what people were, absorbing into their brain. And to my surprise, like I discovered so many things that were so inspiring that I like rejected as being entertainment, and this is not really like art. For example, crazy, but Lady Gaga, I watched a whole documentary on her, and as famous she is, and her music, I don't like her music to be honest, but her creativity is astounding, and the fact that she has been able to touch so many people and has been so successful, I think that's incredible. Like entertainment and artistic value at the same time. And just going back to what Stephanie was saying about like money within the creative world, I think that the more, like from my point of view, the more that you can reach out to people, the better, because art is also at the end of the day about contribution. It's not about like keeping it to yourself and like just in that small community. It's really about if you can reach more and more people and keep artistic integrity, which I think is very important. Kudos to you, kudos, like be inspiring, get it out there, get paid for what you're worth, because I don't think anyone wants to be living poor, but you got to develop that, artistic integrity too. So anyways, I don't know. I think that, I think that entertainment can be art, and there's a lot out there that is very freaking creative.
We could relate all this that we've been talking the past few minutes to the burlesque episode, which was one of our very first episodes where we did ask the question, does the movie Burlesque with Christina Aguilera and Cher, is that really burlesque? And they were like, no, this is not the real burlesque. The real burlesque has a whole bunch of different body types, has women a lot more willing to express passion more than express... that's actually a song in the burlesque, which I love. But the entertainment of the movie did bring us, or the actual burlesque performers that we had at the show, the many of them that were all here, did raise awareness of actually looking into what an art form really is after watching it on a big screen, questioning it. Like, is that really burlesque? Is it really, what kind of training are they doing, and what feeds them to be what they are in the essence?
We're just so used to not having money and doing things with a very little budget or with no budget at all. And I feel like we got used to that and sat on that idea of being all right with it and kind of just accepting it, that we've chose this pathway that doesn't make a lot of money. But I feel like that's where we're wrong, that the fact that we accept that and that we agree to that within ourselves, when really, if you really want to make a living out of this, you could choose your lifestyle. But I think there's a way of making this into your life if you really push forward and change that idea of not being able to make money with it, or that it's okay that you're not getting paid, or continuously doing things for free or with very little budget. So it's like, I think we set ourselves up for this.
Yeah, you're my new best friend, Stephanie. I think that, I don't think, for me, it's not okay to be a poor artist anymore, because the things that I envision, like Ted and we run a dance rock opera company called Woo Me Myth, and the things that we envision in our minds, there's no way we can do it with limited funds. Like, right now we don't have a lot of funds, but as we grow, my goal is to be able to fund our shows, because in order to express the things that we envision, like I said, we need funding, and we need to get paid, because there were so many years after I graduated Concordia where I put so much of my heart and sweat and blood and soul into producing shows and creating them, and at the end of the processes, I would be basically broke. Like, I didn't know how to pay my rent, and I kind of decided, I'm like, that's it, there's no more of that, because I feel like what I'm doing is valid, and that I do need to be, rewarded for that. And no matter what, we can argue about this, money does make the world go round. We need money to do all the things we need to, right? Even, for example, this radio show, the equipment, the space, like everything requires the resources. So, yeah, I think that it's really important that we change within our own mindset and belief that, like, as artists, we need to be poor. I don't know how we're going to do that yet, but I think we should all band together and start shifting that paradigm, because artistic work is valid, for sure. It is. That's what gives us inspiration in our life. And, even movies, like there's a lot of crap Hollywood movies out there, but there's a lot of incredibly brilliant movies out there. And yeah, it gives people life. It gives them hope and inspiration, allows them to see more out of life. And I think that's what art can do. And if that's, valuable, we need to be paid for it.
I think that it goes back to what Steph was saying about entertainment and about the money factor in entertainment, because a lot of that rage that is turned towards purely entertainment, quote unquote stuff, comes from people who are working really hard under art, who are really being thoughtful about what they're doing, who have trained really hard to get there. And they see a lot of the governmental funding go to stuff that is innately popular, that will make money anyway. So there's this divide between the artists who are working really hard, who are creating good content, good work, but there's not as much of an audience in them, so it won't attract much funding from the public. But all that government funding goes to big movies, which will make money, which will bring money back to the government too, but is so common denominator that it's not that hard for them to make money. So I think that a big part of why the entertainment industry, the pop culture, can be so harshly criticized in dance is because of this divide of dance artists having such a hard time in having to accept projects where they won't get paid because there's not going to be enough of an audience to really pay properly.
It's a really hard industry, between artistic integrity and following into what the entertainment industry wants from the artist. Because I actually have an incredibly talented friend. He's a musician. He's from New York. He's at a point right now in his life where record companies are approaching him from all over the place. And when I say like big record companies, like he met with Dr. Dre and was talking about, signing with these record companies, and he's under this pressure now to pump out music that the industry is like, we want to hear more like this, we want like something like this, and we need it by this time. And he's like in this place where he spent so many years of his life on his own terms, on his own timing, creating music, and he's like, these guys, they don't understand that the creative process takes time. You can't just pump it out, as they're demanding. So it's really crazy, because I think as artists, if we want to become bigger and if we want to be represented or produced just as a musician or whatever, there's like this demand of keeping your integrity and also giving them what they want. So I think it's just like the reality of what we live in as artists, and it's like, how do you manage that? I think it's hard. I don't know. It's tricky.
I think there's a lot to, you in my mind, and I think I have a lot of I got to do still a lot of work with that. But the fact of being like, well, of course, you participate in projects or you run your own projects for free because you have to start that way, right? If not, you won't be doing anything at all. You won't be gaining experience, so that it has to come from somewhere. And something that was really interesting when we had Marie Bélan talk about when we had her on the show, and she was talking about her experience in Nice and in les Jeux de la Francophonie, and they were representing Canada, and in a competition, representing Canada, representing dance in a competition. And, we asked the question as if that changed the piece that she was bringing there, if she was adapting it, if she felt like she had to, really bring it and do more tricks or and it comes down to, that balance of not feeling that pressure, that exterior pressure, and to continue doing what it is you're doing without that exterior pressure of having to impress, please, or win a competition, right? So it's like I thought that was a really interesting thing, and she did it really well, where the piece was still, the creation that she applied with, and it didn't become something else to kind of win over the hearts of people who don't know what real contemporary dance is. And when I say real contemporary dance, I mean, I think what we see contemporary dance as. Yeah.
I think it also starts within the artist too, when you create a work, and if you envision that you, like, who do you want to see this? Because sometimes maybe I didn't think about that. You know, I was more concerned about expressing my own, like, feelings and the experiences that I went through in my life, and I didn't really care. I never considered the audience, actually, when I was in school and for a long time when I was creating work. And, you know, perhaps it's also about considering what our audience is and who we want to see this work and how we want to inspire them. And that in itself could trigger, you know, something that would allow a greater audience to access, like, work that's being made.
I love that you brought up that point that your tastes or your perspective on valid dance change from when you're studying it to when you're creating it, when you're watching it. Like, it evolves as you like. I've seen my own tastes in dance evolve in terms of what I want to make and also what I want to see, and I think that has to do with exactly what we're talking about. Is once you start to realize who are you making it for. Do you have to keep these people in mind? And I keep thinking about these two works in opposition. One was Kiss and Cry by that Finland company. And it was an amazing work that was chock full of cliches and really interesting stuff. And for me, that was really far on the entertainment spectrum, but still really valid and a really great show. And then, like, anything by Nicolas Quentin, which is like super introspective and abstract and difficult work to watch. So it seemed like really far from that entertainment point, but at the same time so strong and valuable in its own right. And how I find that extreme where Quentin is in is so much of a risk, so much of a, because you got to go for it all the way. You can't kind of, like you're saying, like we're doing in school, introspect, do your own thing and not give a shit about what everybody else is going to see. That has to play, but it's so far in the realm of risk and of unverified entertainment value that it's, I don't know how you even begin to start creating work there.
I think that's also a really important process, though, to go into that place where you're like, I didn't take risks, and I'm just going to let my the creative spirit to unleash and just be like, yeah, like, this is what I'm doing, you know? It doesn't make any sense, but you kind of have to go through that to allow yourself that experience and that freedom to understand that that is something that you also need to hold within as an artist. And then I think that it's good to balance, to consider your audience as well and what you're feeding to them. It makes me think of one of my, like, artistic choreographic heroes, Sidney Larby. He had a show called Babel. It was beautiful. It was amazing. It was so brilliant. But it was something that was also, like, creatively just intelligent, physically, like, everything was amazing. But it also had an element that allowed people a window to come in, people that, you know, may not understand or like the interpretive dance, you know. It was beautiful. It was great. And I think that's, like, a good balance of intelligent approach to creative process choreography dance with a window that allows anyone to come in and take something from it and laugh and you know, be in awe and be inspired. It was really beautiful.
And I wanted to know, Joanie, because it was initially you and I that were having the conversation about kind of tastes changing as your situation changes, and I wonder what you have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. We did mention that before. I know you guys keep looking for this work that's going to be that's going to blow your mind, or maybe just something that you know has a work that has been very deeply researched, or something that you can compare to the dozens, if not more than that, the shows that you've seen in the past year, which I have seen none, or maybe one. But I find myself that sometimes I just want to see dance. I just want to see something, as you say, maybe that's very open to everybody to go and see something beautiful, I guess, sometimes. You know, I just want to be entertained maybe by dance. And I don't know if maybe my taste has changed. Maybe the absence of seeing dance has made me want to go see a dance piece and enjoy it more than question and be like, oh, he thought so much about this or that. And no, I do want to understand it, I guess, now where I'm at this point as a spectator. I do want to appreciate deeply what I see more than not appreciate it, but appreciate that I didn't appreciate it, if that makes sense, you know.
An interesting thing now is the question whether you can fully appreciate dance, or if you're stuck at this criticizing or evaluating or comparing, and this mindset of seeing so much work or doing your own work. So I personally find it really difficult to sit through a piece and not have my brain go, oh, I love that. Like, I'm going to write this. I love this image. I'm going to write it down. Whether I could use it in photography or in writing, or whether it inspires me and I'm constantly thinking of my own creative process and how I could apply it to my own, or just thinking about like, oh my God, I would have done that so differently. You know, it's like, or just being like, this is brilliant. I can never make work like this. And then you come out of the show and you're completely like depressed on the ground crying. And you're like, Jesus Christ, why am I wasting my time? Like, this person has already done everything that I want to do. You know, there's like, it's like, how do we become a spectator? How do we just witness dance without and turn our brains off? And I feel like that's a difficult thing ever since I started studying dance or talking about dance.
I have a very specific example in mind for me of one of those moments when I was watching that and was just like so amazed by the show and just so jealous at the same time, both of the dancers for dancing something like this, because you know when you see something and you're like, oh man, I wish I was dancing that right now, because they're like the movement quality, the energy, the type of movement, whatever, it just resonates so much with you. And also just being like, who came up with this? Like, all of the ideas I wanted to place in a piece, they've done it now, so what else can I do? So I'd like to actually hear what examples for you guys of pieces that have done that, because we talk a lot about ourselves, but we don't talk much about our tastes. And I think that's interesting to hear. So Steph, what piece has made you feel that way?
I don't think it's a piece in particular. I always have this impression that I'm not doing the work that I want to be doing. I get really involved in my projects where they even haunt me when I'm trying to sleep, and I'm only thinking about that and applying everything that happens to me in that, and it really becomes my life. Like, when I'm putting my whole life into it, even though I'm not constantly in the studio working on it, I bring it on the streets when I walk. So it's this getting so involved in this one process and feeling like you need to stick to it and you can't break out of it because you're not done that project yet. So I think that's more something that's haunted me, and seeing other work kind of triggers those other possibilities of things that you could be doing or subjects that you could be bringing forward. So I think that would mostly be it for me. I mean, whether it's... I actually went to see Passerelle 840. There were 3 pieces in the evening, and the first one was Connect the Dots. The second one, I don't remember the title, but it's probably better off that way. And the third one was No Fun. We had Hélène talk about it, and I realized also the importance of the combination of pieces and how they influence the way you're going to watch the next, and the way you're going to leave with this whole ensemble of everything you've seen. But I did have that feeling when I saw Hélène's piece of wanting to just be a part of it and not give a fuck and just like throw myself everywhere and give the finger to the audience, and like there's this rebel side of me, but yet again my work is super delicate and precious, and I'm doing the opposite of that. So it's this struggle of wanting to move on and do something else, but I have that. I always do that. I do projects and jump from a project to the next and don't let them develop. So now I'm actually developing a project and sticking with it, but I feel like I want to be somewhere else already. So I think those are my struggles.
Yeah. This is going to sound like a bit of a dated example, but the first time I really felt like genuine like depression from from how much I enjoyed a show was when I saw a work by Jury Killian at Place des Arts,
The Kilian night?
Yes.
That you invited me to, actually.
Yeah, okay.
It was beautiful.
It was incredible. That was perfection on stage,
Yes.
as far as I was concerned at that moment.
Big red skirts. That was my favorite part.
Oh, I was
Anyways, sorry.
Anyway, you can Google Julie Kilian. And this is what I say, it's a bit dated. It's very neoclassical. It's very straight. But it's beautiful work. It's beautiful work. And in that vein, too, Amelia by Edward Locke, the video version, not the stage version. The video version also, I feel like it's just so crisp. It's so clean. It's so gorgeous, the work. And a bit more recently, someone who's inspired me, but it maybe less in the way that you're talking about, JD, because I don't think I have her skills. But Dorian Neskenoder, who we've had on a couple of times, and I gush a little bit when she comes on because I'm a really big fan of her work. Although I don't think it's quite in the vein that I work in, but it's really exciting. And last but not least, Political Mother by
Hofe Schechter.
Hofe Schechter. That was pretty hot.
Which was my pick. I saw it when it was released in London, England, when I was there, and that's my quote-unquote depression piece, I guess. I mean, but then again, the next day I remember going to Pineapple Dance Studios in Covent Garden in London. I was like, I want to take a dance class. I took a pure technique class, which killed me, but I never went after for another year. But that piece really blew my mind. I did see their previous piece, Uprising, in Montreal, did the workshop with a few dancers, and this company just blows my mind. One of the first dance pieces I saw when I was in Cégep, the good thing about that deck is that they really wanted us to go see a lot of dance pieces. They paid for it. They gave us this awesome package with Dansité back then, who was like really cheap. And I did see a piece by Roger China, which was called Apricot Trees Exist. And I remember it really clearly was at l'Agora, and it was really good dancing. It was pure lines. And I remember it to this day. It's been almost 10 years, actually, to the day that I went to see that piece. One by Emmanuel Jout, also, that I saw a while back at UZNC, which was amazing.
When I was at Cégep de Drummondville, we also went to see shows, and one of my first real contemporary dance shows that wasn't like Ballet Jazz de Montréal or something fancy was Journal Intime from Cop Public, and that's also the first time I saw Ken Roy on stage. So it was I think that piece it always stuck on me because it was the first time I was like, whoa, this is a type of dance. I still didn't know what contemporary dance was or what dance was overall.
What about you, Jen? You've been thoughtful over there.
Yeah, okay, I have a few that just that come to my mind. One is not dance. I think it's more like it was in the Cirque Complètement festival like a few years ago, Cirque Invisible. That show, every time I think of it, just blows my mind. Did you see it?
No, I wish.
It was 3 hours of pure magic. This couple, Victoria Chaplin is actually the granddaughter of Charlie Chaplin and her husband, and they've been working on this piece for 10 years, and they just kept refining it and perfecting it. It was 3 hours of pure magic. You're just like, how did they do that? And that was, that piece really inspires me. And one of the things that inspired me is because when I read in the program, he was just talking about how he's had 2 shows under his belt. One he's worked on for 10 years, another one he's probably worked on another 10 years. And he was like, in my mind, I would wish that I'd only worked on one piece and just have kept perfecting it. And I love that idea. It stuck with me always, that one piece where you just dig into it and you go deeper and you just keep refining it and it just becomes magic. And it's always inspired me. But if anyone gets a chance to see this show, it's pure magic. The things they do, you're like, oh my God, the illusions, everything. It was beautiful. There's another piece that sticks in my mind, and this is actually one of those kind of pieces that are really challenging. You either don't like it, or you're like, whoa. I don't even know the name of the company, but it was a Brazilian company that came into Festival Transamérique a few years ago. Just one of those pieces where you're like, when you're watching it, you just have no idea what the heck is going on. You get confused, and you're like, ah. And then afterwards, it just stimulates something that you're like, how did they do that? It was crazy. Don't know what the name is. Don't know what the company. I know they're from Brazil. I wish I need to figure it out. But yeah, it's one of those pieces where you're like, how did they do that? How did they do it? City Larby, like I've mentioned, I loved that piece, Babel. I thought it was just so inspiring because it just was like, it had all ranges of emotions in there, like people were laughing from their gut and people were just in awe. Crystal Pite, like I think her recent show, Crystal Pite, is just brilliant. What was her last show? The Shakespeare
the Tempest
one.
replica.
Yes, that was amazing.
Dude, for me, it's Dark Matters. That
was a good piece too. Crystal Pite, I think she's beautiful. The pieces that like that really put like the human like body on stage and just like explode like what you imagine is possible, and the beauty of how the body moves, you know, like Crystal Pite, even like Ultima Vez, like the physicality of those dancers, it's insane. I mean, they probably injure their bodies like crazy. But
yeah, I took an Ultima Vez workshop that hurt.
Oh, just the physical, yeah, that for me is where dance for me I just love, where you're just like, how the frick do they do that with their bodies? It's crazy, you know. That's exciting because we don't move our bodies anymore in society. So when you get to watch someone who has that power in their body and that expressivity, it's just so awe-inspiring. So yeah.
We're getting all excited here.
Like, I can go for another hour.
Totally running out of time. But we want to know what's up with each of us, because we're all kind of launching into different territories. Some scary, some exciting, some none boring. Nothing boring, but we're all going into kind of new pathways. Starting right about now, what better time than a year into the Dirty Feet podcast? Because that's how everyone keeps track of time, right?
Episodes.
So let's take the time. Let's start with you, Steph, because you're the newest addition to the team.
Yeah.
And you've also got a lot of exciting stuff going on. So let us know about that.
I left with my lover to Paris for a few months, and then we came back running because we hated it over there. But while I was over there, it was kind of nice to back up and just think back about Montreal, about the community, about dance, about even the non-dance things about Montreal and why I loved it. So I came back with this different energy of just wanting to like own it and just do it. So that I guess that motivation really helped me, and I had to step away from it to really know what I wanted. So when I arrived, I called a few of my favorite dancers and got involved with a body slam as well. And that's where I met Ian Ferrier, who is a collaborator of mine, and we're working on a project called Pour Corps et Lumière, for Body and Light. And everything's just kind of been falling into place, and it's been really crazy. I'm really excited, also nervous and overbooking myself, but I love that. So it's really exciting. But when I got back from Paris, I was asked to be artist in resident at Mainline. So that's really been a huge, huge help. Just having space to create and research my work has been really lovely. Applied for the CAF lottery to tour for the Fringe, and actually got picked, which is crazy. So we're going to New York, Saskatoon, Edmonton, Victoria, and Vancouver. Originally we were going to San Francisco to see Joanie, but that's not going to work out. So we swapped it with Vancouver. So that's happening. We're working on that show, which will be an hour-long production. So we're 7 in the company. We're also, fundraising and just going to make it happen and do it with whatever money we can get our hands on. And in February, we have a show December 5th, which is also a fundraising show. It's a half-hour production called L'Embarquement. And then at the end of February, we are doing 4 shows at Tangente, with en programmation double with Kimberly. So that's a thing. I'm just telling myself one show at a time, but that will be another half-hour production that we're doing. It won't be the same one we're presenting December 5th because we can't do that. Not allowed. So yeah, I'm also writing a one-woman show right now called Me, Myself, and I, which is a movement and monologue, and it's an intimate storytelling show about my adventures with a glass eye. Has a lot to do with why I got into dance and my relationships and all of that. So it's a very personal slice where I could kind of get deep down inside and discover a few things about myself. So I'm working on that, and that's going to be at the end of January.
Throw us some resources. What's some sites we should go and visit?
Yeah, you could check us out on Twitter. It's @ForBodyAndLight. I have StéphanieMorinRobert.com, also forbodyandlight.org, pourcorpsetlumière.org, forbodyandlight.com, pourcorpsetlumière.com, and we're working on the website now. So I guess, it's crazy.
Bye, girl.
We've got another grand adventure starting over here with J.D. Papillon. You're finishing your contemporary dance degree at Concordia. And what's next for you, buddy?
Wow. Basically, since I finished, what I've been doing mostly was doing the professional classes with RQD, Circuit Est. There's a workshop in February that I'm absolutely excited for with David Zambrano. So this is really where most of my energy has been going to. I've also been dancing for a choreographer called Dominique Sophie. So we presented 2 different works, one at the Sauvons le Bain Saint-Michel Festival in the Bain Saint-Michel, so that was a fantastic opportunity to dance there. And we presented at L'Oeuf, which is a loft performance space. And we're still collaborating on new stuff together, so it's really fun to dance for her. But yeah, most of my energy has been going not towards creation, but towards, I feel, just training my body and finding more of what I have to say through the body.
That sounds very exciting. Do you have any resources for us? Places we should check out what's up next?
Become my friends on Facebook. You've never got too many friends on Facebook. J.D.Papillon. Look me up.
Actually, you can have too many. I think 5,000 is the limit.
I'm far from that.
Okay. Joanie Farah,
Yes.
you're leaving us. You're going to warmer weather.
Yes, I seem to be the only one who wants to get out of Montreal. I've been born and raised here or in the surroundings, so unlike you, I want to see other areas. But dance-related, there's this apparently awesome school in San Francisco where I'll be heading next, the Center for Dance, something like that, COD, that I am checking out for sure, which I will tell you all about. And graduating from the translation diploma at Concordia in a week, and available for all your translation and proofreading needs, shall you need it. Again, my website is www.traductionjp.com. I'm on Twitter at traductionjp as well. So yeah, keep in touch.
I can give her a very good recommendation, ladies and gentlemen. Joanie is very professional and knowledgeable. And as we mentioned in the podcast, you know how to use creative language in translation. So
I think I do. Thanks, Alison Burns, for the consistency in your editing and recording of this podcast. I don't know. I hope people know, or if they don't, they should know, because yes, we have recorded one show for 52 weeks straight, but Alison has been showing up to the show all the time. When I was sick, when JD was sick, she was still showing up. She is the heart of this podcast. And me and the other hosts and listeners and guests, thank you for it.
Oh, thanks.
Praise needed.
I enjoy it.
And Jen Dones, so what's next for you in the arts field and business field?
So I run a dance rock opera company with Ted Strauss. He's my collaborator. Right now, we are creating a new show. It's a sci-fi dance rock. It's based on a story by Philip K. Dick called Deus Irae. And yeah, we actually are going to be performing at the Jésus, like inside the church, for Festival Access Asie. We have like a 60-hour residency also in there, which is really amazing. So we're going to be performing our piece there. We actually have 2 other dancers as well, 2 other performers, Maxine Sigalowitz and Karsten Kroll. And yeah, we've got a crazy, amazing team of collaborators. Tristan Brand, he's helping us create a photographic film for the piece. We've got we're working with amazing costume designer Sandra Chirico, and Christine Kinsella is like going to be our production manager. Marigold Santos, who's this incredible visual artist, is helping us create some stuff. Maria Simone is our rehearsal director. So we've put together this crazy team over the last couple months. Thank you to my visionary, Ted Strauss. And then we're also just got accepted to the Montreal Fringe, which is going to be really awesome. We're trying to get into Ottawa Fringe. So yeah, we're just working on that creatively. And hopefully this piece is something we're probably going to be working on for the next few years. And then just, I've also stepped away from a lot of the arts for the last year because I've been basically building my business. I run an Herbalife health coaching business, and just in the spring, my team, we've opened up a healthy active lifestyle center downtown in Montreal called Fit Club 24. So that's basically been consuming my life and will continue to. So that's what I'm doing right now, artistically and business wise. Those are the two focuses in my life right now. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Do you have some way for people to find your Fit Club and for your Woo Me Myth stuff?
Yeah, so Woo Me Myth, we have a website. It's Woo Me Myth, which is WOOMEMYTH.com, and Fit Club 24, so it's fitclub24.ca for information. You can find us on Facebook too, which is probably more exciting because we have all of our fun pictures of all the wicked stuff we get to do at our center. And that's it.
And Alison Burns, I think you have a show in a few days.
Oh God, please no.
Should I rephrase this?
It's a little bit more than a few days, but I do. So as mentioned, I am working with Steph on her project. I'm a dancer for the Pour Corps et Lumière for Body and Light, and so that show goes up on December 5th, and then Bing Bang Boom, the 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'm performing with the band I mentioned earlier, Kayla Milmine and Brian Abbott, in the production Faster Presents The Elephant in the Freestanding Room extended version. This was a piece that we originally created for the Fringe Festival last year at Montreal. It was a half-hour show originally. We were awarded the Freebie Award by the Freestanding Room, which gave us the opportunity to remount the work for free, which is awesome. So we've lengthened the piece by another half hour. So it's going to be an hour-long project. It's silliness, awesome music by two musicians who have a really varied style. There's everything from like punk to jazz to rock to a couple other styles that they want to keep secret until the show. But it's pretty wild. They do these things called collages that are just a mess of sounds that are recognizable. It's really cute. And I've been working collaboratively with them. They've been like writing songs based on ideas we brainstorm together. I create movement that has turned out to be very theatrical, very kind of clownish, almost circusy. What has come out of this collaboration, and it's just a lot of fun. The main character is a little stuffed elephant, so it's hence the elephant in the room. It's an amazing project. I think when creating a piece that's intended to be funny, if you're laughing a lot in rehearsals, that's a good sign. So do come check it out. You can find the information at fasterpresents.com or on Facebook. We are really looking forward to presenting at the Freestanding Room. We've never performed there before. It's a really sweet space, like Saint Laurent, just by Marianne. It's usually meant for theater, so it's going to be fun to dance and play some crazy music in that space. That's a collaboration I hope to continue in the future. It's just been such a pleasant ride. As I said, I've had a longer history with Kayla and a couple of years now with the two of them, so it's really great. Then I'm also continuing my work with Bouge DC. The festival will go up in January, so we were very excited to have our first feedback session last night. So the show is well on its way to being completed, and that's I'm talking about the Common Space Showcase, which is a series of 9 artists this year, emerging choreographers that are presenting work. And the festival is going to be 10 days long this year with several shows. The programming has not been officially launched. It will be, however, on the mashup on Friday. That's the 29th of November. They're presenting at the mashup, which is the festival launch and fundraiser, actually here in the space we are sitting in at the moment. That's the Montreal Improv Theatre, their studio space, which is 3713 Saint Laurent. It's just below Pine, so apparently my whole life just exists on Saint Laurent. No, that's not true. But then the following day, of course, we're going to be presenting our No More Radio first anniversary event, which is going to happen again at the same spots, same time, 8 p.m., good times. There's going to be a couple dance acts. There's going to be some bands. We're going to be just celebrating both the network and Dirty Feet and all the other podcasts involved with the No More Radio. And it's going to be a good time. And And at this point in time, I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the people who've made this happen. In addition to JD Papillon, Stephanie Morin-Robert, Jen Doan, and Joanie Farran, the team here at Dirty Feet. We also want to send out a thank to Tristan Henry, who's our resident composer, who has been working on the intros and outros for us since episode 44, and has also done some of the music kind of in between interviews when necessary. So if there's no credit, it was probably Tristan Henry that did it. Stephanie also designed our logo, which we're very grateful for and very proud of. We also want to thank Mark from the Montreal Improv Theatre, who's always around and always willing to help us find a cable or run one from his home if necessary. He's been very generous in both letting us use the space and just being super on top of it. Paula Flalo, of course, the founder of the No More Radio Network, and makes us more efficient and more professional when we don't know how to use a computer program or something like that. It's amazing how big the team gets when you start talking about everything that really happens to make a weekly podcast go up on air. And I'm very grateful that we have this team of people who are willing to volunteer their time to do this for us. So thank you, and thank you for listening. I really appreciate that we have so many eager listeners. It really makes it worth it for us to continue to put on the podcast when we see the numbers come back and we know that you're listening. So thank you very much. And please keep sharing. You know, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, tell your friends, get somebody else involved, and share the love.
Dirty Feet is recorded every week at the Montreal Improv Theatre. Check them out at montrealimprov.com.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par,
produced and hosted by Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
Stéphanie Morin-Robert,
Jen Doan, et Joanie Farran.
You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.